Bring it up here. Everybody, come on.
You know, there's always a time when people ask me, what's the time when you sometimes kind of like feel the fear, you know? I said, no, I don't fear nothing. You know, I've always been consistent. I've always pursued my dreams. But sometimes when I speak to the mainstream, that's where I kind of like tremble a little bit. So why? Because my English is bad and I eat the verbs and the adverbs, and these guys are speaking very well than me. Anyway, before coming here, we kind of like visited a place, an office, and as we were walking in and we were waiting for somebody because we were kind of like getting some consultation, I sat down in a chair and I saw this magazine right there. And it says, it's a Fortune magazine that says, the 12 greatest entrepreneurs of our time. And so what happened, and for some reason, by luck, you know, you put your fingers on and you try to scan the page. And I came to a page that says, you know, something in here that says, there's a certain individual that came up with the idea for what would become one of the greatest retail stores in the world. And he went on a stroll in Central Park with his boss at the time to share his epiphany. And in 1992, he was a senior vice president for a New York hedge fund, DE Show. And what he did, and listen to this one, he described his dream to create a company that would sell a lot of things online and anywhere in the world, crossing the boundaries, whatever it takes. So his boss listened intently before offering a bit of an advice, because he was a senior vice president. That sounds like a really good idea, but it would have been even better idea for someone who didn't already have a good job. Okay? Big ideas of ground-shifting variety are rare and hard to pull off. But that's the difference between the dreamer and the doer. And all it takes was 48 hours for him to decide and quit his job and get started. And after some 18 years, he redefined retailing, employs 56,200 people, and a company with a market cap value of more than 80 billion, and that's Jeff Bezos of Amazon.com. You're a senior vice president, and at that time they said he was making more than $1 million a year, and he did walk away. What a decision. So normally I always get a text of a quote for the day, and let me kind of like give you a little bit of this one, and it always kind of like coincide with what I just read. It says, a wise old man once said, and maybe some of you have heard this one, when I was a young man, I wanted to change the world. I found I couldn't change the world, so I tried to change my nation. So when I found out I couldn't change the nation, I began to focus on my town. See this one? I couldn't change my town, and as an older man, I tried to change my family. Now as an old man, I realized that the only thing I could change myself, and suddenly I realized that if long ago I had changed myself, I could have made an impact on my family. My family and I could have made an impact on our town. Their impact could have changed the nation, and I could indeed have changed the world. See the difference? So sometimes change is necessary, but in order to succeed, there's a lot of things that needs for you to adapt. And one of those is, there's another quote here, and I really love these things. The best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt with the heart. Helen Adams Keller. So here it is. I made a lot of changes in my life. When in fact it was hard, without good education. Let me bring back you to memory lane. I was not here just happened to be an overnight success. There's a lot of path that I have to go and trudge in order to make a lot of challenges. mean, you can tell when I'm chinky eyes, I'm not from this place. I have a problem. And I always tell this guy, you know, we're both brothers from a different mother. And I said, Jane, have you found our mother? I'll try to find her myself. And he texted me back, and there was a kind of like, you know, a lady that was sleeping halfway. I said, oh, I found our mother, and here she is. Anyway, this way back in the Philippines, you know, I came from a very poor family. I want to let you know that. And my father used to work in a noodle factory, really hard labor. And my mom, in order to make a living, to add more of an income to the family, she washes clothes. And in the Philippines, that time there was no washing machine. You have to do it by the hand. I mean, Philippines was a Spanish colony, so we call it lavandera, you know. And so what happened, but I was lucky to be able to study in a Chinese school because my dad was Chinese. And, you know, I studied really hard and I was granted scholarship because there's an association of a lot of rich people that would like to help a lot of the sons and the daughters of Chinese people that wanted to really get a scholarship. And in those many years, I consistently was able to get that scholarship because I was able to maintain my grade. That's the only way I know that I could continue my study. And so what happened during that time, during my high school years, I got a very close friend of mine from childhood, and we were always together. And he was the son of the owner of the noodle factory where my father was working. So one day he told me, you know what, Joven, a bunch of my friends will be going to the United States for a sightseeing tour. You know, would you like to come? I said, no, I can afford to buy a ticket. I said, don't worry, I'm going to buy you a ticket. And so what happened? I said, okay, really? I said, yeah, we've been good friends, but you know, we're so good friends that every time there's an examination, I always let him cheat, especially in the math quiz. And so what happened? So finally, when I went back to my dad and I told my dad, you know what, Dad? I mean, he invited me and he said he's going to pay for my ticket. My dad just went off the roof. For you to be a laborer, for you, it's kind of like a shame in a Chinese tradition when you ask favor from your boss. And so I came back and said, you know what? I can't. My dad just went off the roof and he doesn't want me to even ask your favor. He said, don't worry. I'm going to convince my dad to convince your dad because my dad is your dad's boss. And to make a long story short, when I went back home the next day, my dad said, you know what, son, you can go. It's okay. There was never a time in my life I was so excited. You know, because we as foreigners, you just don't understand that the United States, you got a lot of influence in the world. And people look at this country with so much dream of how could I come here, you know? Even sometimes people in the Philippines, you know, and sometimes in other country, at 2 o'clock in the morning, they already line up in order to get a visa. And you know what? Out of many, probably 1,000 people lining up, all the way maybe 3, 5, 6 blocks away, sometimes there's only 100 that get granted. And that's how hard it is. And with a fee, I mean, you won't even believe that kind of fee is sometimes worth more than 2 or 3 months of their salary. And once they're rejected, that fee is taken, and you have to save again in order to apply and pay the fee again. And a lot of people in this country just take the thing for granted. That's why you see a lot of foreigners, you know, and this is not kind of like trying to ridicule people, but I'm going to show you what dreams are for. You have to feel that in your heart. And so off we go, and by the time we reached here, we went to a sightseeing tour. After 30 days, they decided to go back home, and I decided to stay. There's 2 reasons why. Number 1, I could never afford to buy the ticket again. That's number 1. And if I were to buy a ticket and my dad has to buy it, he's got to work for 3 months without even putting food on the table. That's how low his salary is. Number 2, I know I could never have, you know, my future in my country because with no education or just a high school, I barely, you know, first year high school at that time. So I decided to stay. So finally, I bought a prepaid calling card and I called my dad. And I said, Dad, you know, I decided to stay. I don't want to go home. And my dad was shaking. I could just picture him in his voice, you know. You could tell from the reverberation. And he said, is there something that I did that you don't want to come home? Please. I said, no, you didn't do nothing. I would like to take my chances. And so with no proper education, I went to different job application. I ended up working for a company called Builders Emporium. How many of you have heard that? It was a hardware store. Thank God they went bankrupt, so I was able to. But I ended up working for that mixing paint for $4.50 an hour. After 2 months, they kicked me out because I was an illegal alien. I never had my green card. So I tried everything. I ended up being a parking attendant. I even tried car wash for 2 days. Maybe my arm was not strong enough, I quit. And so I tried everything, and so finally, with barely, my saving was kind of like draining because I only had like $400 in my pocket, and that's a borrowed money from a friend of mine. When they decided to go back, 7 of them kind of like pulled $100, $50 there, and they give me, and I got almost like close to $500, I could recall, barely. And you know what? Off they go. And during that time, with my money diminishing, I only got $50 in my pocket. I picked up the Los Angeles Times, and I came across this ad that says $50,000, $250,000 a year. So here's a guy that's working for $4.50 an hour, and I was hoping I could get a $250,000 job. So I called the telephone number on that ad. And to my surprise, it was never a job. It was a business opportunity, and it was run by a former waiter by the name of Jeff Roberti, who made $110 million in 10 years. And 30 years in network marketing. So I responded to the ad, and he said, why don't you show up to one of our conventions? I want to expose you what the business opportunity is all about. So I was hoping, I was really curious about it. I was getting excited. And so after 3 days, I showed up at the Bonaventure Hotel. They have a big convention, And when I walked in there were 3,000 people. I thought I was really cool with my suit and my polyester tie. The moment I walked in there and everybody and I know it's expensive, I took it off and just put it in my purse. And so after the whole training, kind of like a super Saturday, people were going up in the stage giving testimony. I was at that kind of a fishing boat. I was making like $150,000. That was Jeff Steger. It's different. And I was looking at, and the amount was so humongous, it was also way beyond my comprehension. And so I got so excited, and then after the whole testimony, they invited a special guest to talk, and it was Jeff Roberti. And it was given 30 minutes, and the guy was so eloquent, but he was really good. And just listening to him, you feel like being magnetized, and it just touches your heart. But after the whole speech, when the convention was done, you know how people decided. I was looking for him, and I could never find him. And for some reason, maybe, he's got a back way, but I didn't find him. So what happened? The following day, I called the number again. It was a recording. I called the second time, the third time, the fourth time, the fifth time, sixth time, seventh time. No response. To a point, I called 48 times. Still didn't call me back. On the 49th call, the answering came up and said, I just left him and you son of a... You know him? 5 minutes after, my phone rang and it was Jeff Roberti. I said, Joven, I'm really sorry. And I said, Jeff, I'm sorry to leave that kind of message. I said, no, it's okay. But the reason why it took me a long time, because in this industry, you need to sort out the people that are really sincere if they wanted to do it. There's a lot of excited fool, and this is what he said, exactly verbatim. There's a lot of excited fool, but only excited for one day, but they never got into their heart. And then the following day, they didn't do nothing, and I just don't understand. So it took me a long time, especially with your accent. If you hear me before, I need the verbs and the adverbs. I have to go to an English proficiency school in order to fine-tune my English. And so maybe he was listening to the answer, this is not the kind of guy that I want to deal with. But anyway, so finally he said, you know what, since you're really very serious, you called me so many times, in 2 weeks, I have a meeting. It's a training. It's not going to be 3,000 people, there's going to be probably 400 or 500 people there. I want you to show up at the Marina Hotel on the west side. I said, okay. So I was still doing some part-time jobs because I want to, my money was not enough. And so what happened, during that day, I woke up early, but I didn't have a car, so I took a bus. And in spite of that, because I have to transfer 3 times with different buses, I was late. So I was running upstairs going up because it was on the second floor. And when I got to the door, I mean, the lady said, you know, where are you going? I said, no, I want to attend the training. I was called by Joven. I said, okay, write your name. And then she wrote kind of like the tag name and put it in my suit. And I couldn't find a seat, so finally I was able to find one at the middle. And I don't know, for some reason, maybe I was just excited and everything. While the meeting was going on, I raised my hands and I almost interrupted the meeting. And Jeff said, you know what, young man, why don't you hold to your question? Because the meeting is in 2 parts. After the second part, I'm willing to answer your question, but let me go on with the meeting. So after the second part of the meeting was over, I was kind of like leaning on the door jamb, like looking cool. And Jeff Roberti came to me and said, you're Joven, right? I said, how did you know? I said, you got your name tag on. I said, okay, I thought it was a fortune teller or something. And then he said, you almost interrupted my meeting. You almost interrupted my meeting. And I said, but can I ask you something? I said, go ahead, please. I said, how much did you make last year? And I was so excited to convert the peso into dollars, and I made $1,800. I said, you know how much I made last year, Joven? I said, no, I made 8.9 million. If I listen to you, how much you think I will earn? And I look at him, and almost like my blood kind of like boiling. I feel like somebody just slapped in my subconscious mind. And he walked away from me, and he paused for a moment. I said, you know, Joven, I was not here to insult you, but I'm trying to make a point here. My intent are good. Why don't you come to the second part of the meeting and I'll spend time with you after that. But in spite of that, I said, okay, you know, but my enthusiasm just stopped. And when I walked in, all the seats were occupied, but I was just following Jeff Roberti. So what he did was to grab a chair at the back, right in the front, and was dragging it. And he put it right there. And I said, come on, young man, that's your chair. So I sat down, and people were looking at me kind of like, you know, strange. And I was not used to going into a meeting with a lot of people, being a farmer. So after the meeting was over, you know, he went to the whole thing, and he really kind of like touches my heart. But 5 seconds before the meeting ended, he used one statement that I would like to use right now. He said, it's not a matter if there's thousands, 4,000, 5,300. There's probably 400 people here, he said. And he said, not even 5, not even 4, not even 3. He said, not even 2. If I touched one person in this entire audience, just one, then my time tonight would be worth it. Right. And you know what? That very year, I became one of the youngest national marketing director in a company called NSA, selling water filters. You know, my group did a lot of group volume that just on my override on the group, Jeff Roberti made in excess of more than $558,000 from my group. What his time working that night, it was for somebody that don't even know anybody from Adam. I came from a foreign land, and you guys are from this place. You know, you have to understand that you have to just be consistent. There's no science in this business. You know, if you set the rules for yourself and set that rules that's what the rules is in order for you to succeed, you can succeed. Consistency. You know, Jose Canseco, you know, the baseball champion. What I'm trying to say, I mean, I can beat the guy, but I need to put the rules. He only get one chance because he's a professional. In my contract, I get 5,000 batting chances. In those 5,000, because I'm consistent, I could hit it. And I've been to 6 different companies, and all those companies failed me. But I've always built more than 40,000 people. And I always build it from scratch. In this business, you need to know what you want, and you don't cut yourself short of anything. You know, I was in a party, a network marketing party, and you know, there were a lot of hotshot people who were making millions of dollars. And there was a jar of candy, you know. Then I saw a child standing right there. So I grabbed a handful of it, and then I used another on my left hand, and I was looking at her. And I kind of like bended my knees, and I was extending both my arms. She slowly came to me, and instead of grabbing the one that's in my left hand, she grabbed the one where there's a handful of it. And she ran back, but she paused for a moment and she looked up and she saw me that I was still extending, willing to give everything I've got. She came back and she grabbed the rest of it. There's one basic thing that you need to understand in that story. If a child's mentality can adapt that having more is better, why can't you?
Right.
Doesn't make sense. You need to understand that there's two things that you need to understand about this business. You need to be consistent. You need to know what you want, and you need to feel it. You need to feel it. You have to have that fulfillment. You know what the biggest fulfillment in my heart? When I started this business, Gano Excel, we started with the 40 chairs and a folding table in an 800 square feet. That's the former customer service. Malaysia did not recognize us yet because it was the business was introduced here by another person, and they were not supporting us. We have to generate our own sales. I have to start with, raising money with my wife, putting the infrastructure. When in fact some of my friends don't even want to come with me, but that doesn't stop me. A lot of people say, I don't want to go to my friends. Well, don't your friends like you? Why don't you start talking to everybody? Let me give you a solution for that. What if everyone you meet, there's a $100 bill on their forehead, and the moment you start talking, they'll bill out, give it to you. How many people you want us to talk?
Everybody.
But guess what? We started from scratch, and in 7 years, I even opened up Peru and some of the Latin countries. I've never been into that country and I don't speak the dialect. All I have to do is bring my interpreter. But when you speak from your heart, there's conviction there. And you know what happened? I just looked at the computer yesterday and we were 120,000 short of hitting 1 million distributors.
Wow.
That was my fulfillment because you know what? Joined the whole North America and the Latin countries, there's already 15 people that made $1 million in Ghana itself. That is part of my fulfillment. Because you know why? You need to understand. 3 years ago, I told my brother, I said, you know what? There's a little bit of a downturn in the economic situation in the Philippines. And then I called my best friend and I said, you know what? Things are not good. My brother got sick and we spent millions in the hospital, and there was some few challenges in their family. So I told my brother, you know what, don't say nothing. I'm going to send you the money. And it is through this business that I was able to send money to the Philippines in order for my sister to pursue and finish his college education. My brother, my younger brother, that I never had a chance to do. I'm only first year high school, and that's my education. Sometimes I always tell people when they say, how did you run a company? I say, well, of course, I got a PhD. It's really a doctorate? No. It stands for public high school diploma. And so I told my brother to buy the factory. And I went there for Christmas, and it happens to be the birthday of my dad. And so finally we kind of like blindfolded him and said, I got a surprise for you. And so we drove, and we went inside where he was really working at the time. And when we took the blindfold, he looked around and said, are we in trouble? I mean, do I have to work again? I said, no, Dad. I bought this company because it's for you now. Fulfillment in my life, and no money can buy that. No money can buy that. And it was tough for me because during that time when my mom was really ill and very sick, nobody in my family, my sister, my brother, attempted to even notify me because they know if I go back, I could never come back again in the United States because that time I never had my paperwork done. And the moment I went there, I thought I would be happy to know that I could give them, when I went back there, all I have to do is visit the grave of my mom. Very painful, but in spite of everything, there's nothing more fulfilling. When God gives you life, what you do with it is entirely up to you. Right? Either you lose it or you win it. You can be somebody. You can be an educated teacher. You can be somebody working in a warehouse, or somebody who just a handyman or anything. But that doesn't mean anything. When you want to pursue that dreams, you need to make that decision. When I walked out there and came here, I made a decision. I don't even know where I have to live. My first living quarter was a garage converted into a room that I had to rent for almost like $150. And during cold times, I have to go to the main house in order to use the bathroom and go back there again. There's a lot of things I have to go through. But I know for one thing that I have felt in my heart that the dream that I have is within this country. There's so much to offer here. Some people said, when you ask them, said, how's life with you? Things are bad and all these things. You want to really see poverty? You go to my country.
Right.
You want to see poverty? You go to Africa. Some of those children, they don't even have a chance to see the ark of a McDonald's. I hate to use my friends, but a lot of times, this is what one of the best speakers that I heard said, if both of your feet are in the United States, you're the luckiest son of in the world. Even if you have nothing, this country has so much to offer, but you're taking it for granted.
That's right.
There's no science in this thing. There's no science in this thing. What you need is basically the best and most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt from the heart. Opportunity, if you don't take it, somebody will.
That's right.
Either you lose it
Or you win it.
or you win it. Where can you find an opportunity where you started barely in a shoestring and why not to be the CEO of your own company? Franchise of a McDonald's, $250 million. Okay? And that is what reality is all about. When you walk out of the portals of the door, you don't need to believe anything what you want, but you need only to carry a simple story that you live into. My story is good enough. You don't need to hear somebody here that makes 400 or 500 million. In my network marketing career, with no education, barely could even speak English, no money, started almost from nothing, came from a very poor family. In the 23 years, I made almost $16 million accumulative. Of course, that's not net because I got expenses too. But I was able to save half of it when I got married. If I was single, I could have been broke again. So she was good keeping half of my money. So for you that are looking at this for the very first time, put your heart into it.
Yes.
There's only one thing that make it happen. You and you alone can make that difference after all. Thank you. God bless.
Thank you.